Okay, in this little video we are going to attempt to paint an eye, and I'm just got a photo reference here. I don't know if you can see it, it's probably out of the picture. I'm just going to be using black paint. It's golden airbrush colors. I get my paints from Opus Art Supplies. There it is there. It's golden. It's just artist airbrush paint. And I thin it out 50-50 with water. So I put in my water first. You always put in your water first, or your thinners, whatever type of paint you're using, and then your paint. So I use 50-50. So here we go. Let's see how we do. Check to see how my airbrush is spraying. Looks okay. And I've got my pressure set at about 20 psi, I believe. So let's see, I don't know if you can see this picture, but let's just bring it over to there. That's my reference. And let's go. See if we can do this in half an hour. So start painting around the eye. I'm just slightly outlining all my pencil marks. Just lightly. Let's paint the iris here. I'm doing this freehand, but you can use a stencil to paint these circles. The only problem with stencils is that it gives you a very hard edge, and eyes do not have a hard edge. Actually, to be honest, nothing has a hard edge. So you just fill this in, and there is a highlight in the eye, and I just painted over that, but that's okay because we can get that back with the eraser. And I'll show you how you do that. This paint's not spraying nice, so I'm going to add a bit more water, and then I just put my cloth over it, and back pressure will mix the paint. Let's see how that does. Seems to be better. And you know what? I am going to use a template just to show you how I do it, or how you can do it with the template. So I got these circle templates. You can buy those at most art supply stores. Find the appropriate size for that, and that looks like it. That one might be closer. There we go, line it up. And you're going to want to cover these other circles because you could get overspray, but I just put my finger over it. And I'm just doing it light. I'm not going to go too crazy. It's just going to give me a better idea where this pupil is. Good enough. That gives you a nice big circle. Let's do the big one at the same time. That one's too big. That one's about right. So again, just go light. There we go, that's enough. At least that fills it in. Now, let's find an eraser. And I use pencil erasers, like this guy here, and you can rub it out. I'm just painting on a on some art paper. Put that down so I don't shake paint everywhere. So just scratch that out. So that's gone. There is a highlight right here, so I may as well just start scratching that in. And we can go ahead and continue painting the eye. And I went outside here with the circle, but that's okay because that's all going to get painted dark anyway. Or you could, which I will do, is just get rid of it now while I can. There. Now let's just darken this top lash area. So I'm going fairly quickly here because I want to try and do this in a half an hour. Normally this would probably take me a couple hours. It'll give you an idea of the steps and what you kind of need to do. So there is a shadow under the eyelid, and that's going to cast on the eyeball, across the pupil, and into the eye itself here. And that's why you use photo reference, because you want to keep a really good eye, an eye on your photo reference. You don't want to start making stuff up as you go. So I'm just painting the shadow area here, following the photo, going back into the iris, darkening it up. That's going to be your blackest area, and the shadows are pretty dark through here as well. So I get this part painted first. And you can probably hear my air is on all the time. I'm not turning it on and off like this. I press my trigger down for air and I leave it on while I'm painting. And that'll also help eliminate tip dry. So paint drying on the tip of the needle there, we have to pick it off every once in a while. So we just continue here. Mix my paint a bit more. And just following the photo. Check my paint. Seems to be a little thin now, so I'm going to add a little bit more paint just to make it a little bit more darker. It's really thin. Mix it in there. And how are we doing? A bit darker. So. And don't be afraid to use a paintbrush as well. You don't have to stick to your airbrush to do the whole painting. You can use your brush to do little details if you're not comfortable painting a really tiny little lash line. Just use your paintbrush. And there's a little wrinkle in the eyelid area. Another one there. Oh, my paintbrush is gumming up here. That's okay. Put this over there. All right. Get more shadow. You'll get the idea. And like I say, I usually spend a whole lot more time on the eye. The bottom lash a bit. Quite dark in this corner of the eye, so you can keep adding color back there. Again, just watch your reference, because there is that white spot right there of the eye that needs to remain much lighter. And through here there's going to be some darker color. You can put that in now. Above the eye, I'm just adding some color up to where the eyebrow usually goes here. I'm not going to paint the eyebrow. We're just going to concentrate on the eye. Give that some shape here. It looks like in this photo she's wearing a lot of mascara, so it's all kind of clumpy. So you won't have to paint like really tight individual lashes on her. You can get a little bit loose. And I am going to bring out my paintbrush and I'll show you what I mean. You can use your airbrush to, your paintbrush to give you some details. Under the eye is a little darker. Up to there. And that's a little darker. You can see around the eye there, it's a bit darker. This is why I didn't want to do it too much with the stencil. So I want it to be kind of slightly out of focus around there. So darken this a bit more. Quite dark here in the shadow from the eyelid across the eye, and then this actually goes right up into the eyelashes. Dark in this corner. There. Hey. It's getting there. Let's take a paintbrush and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to take paint directly out of my cup because it's the same color that I've got mixed. I'm going to thin it out a bit with a bit of water. I have a little palette strip over here off camera, just adding a bit more water to make it even lighter. And then you can take your brush and, I mean, how easy is this, right? This is way more comfortable if you're feeling a little edgy about trying to get your airbrush to give you a nice, clean, small, thin paint line. Well, nothing wrong with using a paintbrush. Nothing at all. So let's see. Where are these lines? Don't make them all going the same direction. Like, I mean, at this edge, yeah, they've all got to kind of go out this way, and then they kind of go up, and then they go out this way. More paint. We'll do a few down here. You can get some really fine lines. And if you look closely at the eyelashes, some of them cross over some of the other ones. So you got one going here, you got another one coming into that one, and you could even have one going across it. Don't make them all even. Keep them random. Same when you do your eyebrows. They're going to be random as well. So now there's, in the eye, you can see all these different little lines. You can use use your paintbrush for that. So you can just kind of paint these little wiggly lines all across, all in different directions. Keep them light too. Like, use a bit of water and thin out the paint so the lines come out fairly light. Because as you spray your dark airbrush paint over top of this, it's going to get, all those little lines are going to get darker and darker the more you spray over them. So, get all these little lines. And again, different directions. Don't make them all the same. So, like that. That's probably enough for the lines. Now we can go over this a bit. And once we highlight that eye a bit, let me get a piece of tape here. This paper flapping away here is bugging me from the air from the airbrush. That'll help. So. So in this white part of the eye, it's not really white. You're going to hit it with a little bit of your color, because all the dark colors around it are going to make that appear white, when in fact it's actually a light gray. Continue working on the eye, just going around the outside of it. Adding it darker and darker. We'll get these highlights in a minute, and then it'll start looking quite shiny. I want to get a lighter area in the shadow parts of the eye, so I pull my airbrush back a bit. So further back, you can hardly see any airbrush or any paint coming out, and that gives it a really nice soft effect. And the closer you are, the harder your edge is going to be, and the more paint is going to hit the surface. And closer. My paint seems to be coming out of my trigger, and I think it's because it's not sealing properly here in my gun. I'll have to fix that. Anyway, we can continue on. This line here is where the lower lashes are going to be attached to. Darker there. Again, just keep following your photo. If there's a line there, put a line there. If there isn't one, don't put one there. Pretty simple. Should have had a clock running so I can see what time it is. I don't know how far I'm into it yet. I may have to stop and go check. And just keep adding your shadows where they say to add them. And get more lashes going on here. I got my paint thinned out enough that I'm comfortable trying to paint these lashes with my airbrush. If you thin your paint out, you lower your air pressure, you'll find you've got way more control over your lines. Granted, they're going to go down a lot thinner, so you're going to have to go over them more than one time. When you think, oh man, I got a really cool airbrush or a really cool eyelash, and you realize, oh, it's too light, you got to go over it again. You got to replicate those strokes. But like I say, if you're not too comfortable doing it, then just grab your paintbrush. And I'm still going to grab the paintbrush to do these. Because right now, my airbrush isn't working the way I'd want it to work. So I'd have to stop and clean the tip. I think what's happening is there's paint dried in the nozzle, so the needle isn't sealing it properly. So when I spray a line and I stop, a little bit of paint is still shooting out. It's not sealing properly. Let's just work on this area a bit more. Take a paintbrush and we'll do some little eyelashes. How about that? There's quite a few here. It is actually quicker to just do them with the paintbrush. See how fast I'm doing them. And if you start at the bottom and brush up, the line gets much thinner at the top, so it kind of looks more natural. So here, you don't have to really follow the photograph as closely as you do in other parts. Because, I mean, we all have different eyelashes. They're going to be thicker or thinner, but you do have to maintain the direction. Some of them are thicker than others because this is, like I said, has lots of mascara on here. And some of these are kind of clumped at the bottom here. So you can kind of make them a little bit darker. And then these little guys, they start down here. And typically the lower lashes are thinner than the upper eyelashes. And when I say thinner, I mean more sparse. We're going to go in and do some highlights to start showing some sparkle and stuff like that in the eyes. And they get a little longer as they come out to this end of the eye. They're much smaller down here. Like I said, this isn't really a tutorial, but more just to show you some of the steps that you need to do to paint an eye. So let's get this little highlight going here, because there is a couple of lash reflections actually that go across this white part of the eye. You can take your paintbrush and just kind of paint a couple of these in, very tiny little guys like that. And then we've got some highlights along this part of the eye. It's the eyelid. And you can also clean up a bit of your overspray doing this. Especially if you get your line a little bit too thick, you can clean it up with the eraser. There's all kinds of different erasers as well. There's more aggressive ones, like an ink eraser, those blue ones. And then along here we got little highlights on the eyelid, the lower lid anyway. A couple there. You can also grab, do I have one here? Yes, a little X-Acto blade. And if you're careful, you can put little highlights wherever you want, like that. Just scratch them in, but just be careful you don't go through the paper. There you go. Tiny little, oops. And I got a little bit of paint. Lighten this area up a bit. You know, we're kind of almost